Unless you are not afraid of failing, so if you are not afraid to fail, it's true joy.
So it's a combination of essentially art history and anthropology, correct? And it's one of the CSP coordinated studies classes. I took it last spring. No. No. So coordinated studies is where they take two different disciplines and they kind of combine them into one course. There was also Back to the Beat for Your Soul, which was last academic year, where it was a combination of English 101 and 102, and kind of music literature and music music history. Yeah, so typically it's 10 to. There was one that was 18 credits at some point, but it's a combination.
So welcome everyone. Happy to have you all here for another conversation on social issues. I want to remind you, I can see lots of familiar faces, so you probably know that the library has been running these conversations for since last year as an outgrowth of the Occupy Seattle presence on our campus. And we want to continue these conversations as long as people are interested and engaged. The library is doing this because we think of ourselves as we are the information place, and a lot of our information happens in books. It comes to you through databases and through all kinds of other resources that we have, but we think another really valuable way to exchange information is through the expertise of the people we have on campus and through your engagement with these discussions. So I'm happy to have you here. Today's conversation is on food and communication with communication studies instructor Kelsy Maki. And before we get started, I just wanted to tell you a couple quick things. Next week, the discussion is the gender paradox in suicide, looking at the difference between suicide rates for men and women and why they exist, with psychology instructor Crystal Archibald. And I also wanted to let you know that there's an opportunity next quarter to attend this series as a credit class. It's a 5-credit class that meets on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It's called SSC 187, and I have little flyers if anyone is interested. And actually, I'll just, if you want to take one, otherwise you just pass them around. And then finally, we are currently putting together the schedule for next quarter. If you have ideas for speakers or for topics, you can talk to me or to Katie Dichter. We are the ones organizing. And then information about each conversation, starting with about 3 conversations ago, is going up on our website. If you click on the link to research guides, you can find another link to conversations on social issues. So, all that, let's get started. Thanks, Kelsy.
So, it's really nice to be here with you today. I would like to start out, though, by finding out maybe what you've eaten. Today? Yeah, have you eaten anything today?
Yes.
So somebody tell me, what did you eat?
Scrambled eggs.
Is that all you've eaten?
Yeah.
Scrambled eggs? And that, okay.
And coffee.
And coffee. Anything else? Yes. A muffin sandwich from the school.
2 pieces of bread, totally not toasted because I didn't have time. So just ate them all as well.
So you just ate 2 pieces of raw bread.
Yeah.
Okay. So how did you make those choices? You said you didn't have time.
Yeah.
Right? No time to eat.
It tastes good.
Yeah, it tastes good, right? Is that why you picked the strawberry cream cheese instead of the regular cream cheese? Yeah. Ah, you had a nutritional reason, right? You wanted protein for what you were going to eat. Yeah, it looked good, right? It looked like something you wanted to eat. Did you maybe pass up some options that didn't look as good to you? You just did whatever you had, right? Yeah. What about you?
Oh, I don't like the fried noodles in the package. A plastic box with the noodles.
Yeah, so that was an option and you said, no, I don't like that. Yeah.
Plastic one. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the reason I ask you is because we are always making choices about what we are going to eat. And we have a lot of reasons for making those choices. But one of the reasons that we have is how we feel about it and what we consider it to say about us and what we consider it to do for us. Okay? And those might be nutritional reasons, but they might also be reasons related to our identity or our ideas about what makes something good or bad. Like in this case, what's your name? Sue said, okay, I do not want to eat these noodles, those are bad, right? But somebody else might come through and look at those and go, that's a great breakfast, right? And those divergent ideas about what makes for a good or bad meal or something delicious to eat or something not so delicious to eat come from our cultural influences and our individual experiences. And so today, I would like to talk to you about how food works as a communication medium. When you eat something, you are saying something to yourself about who you are, but also anybody out there who's looking at you or observing you also makes an assessment on who you are based on what you're putting in your mouth, right? When I see this gentleman eat that egg sandwich in the morning, I can start to make, I can start to have ideas about who he is, right? I can start to say, oh, maybe he's interested in having protein, or he's busy because he's eating in the cafeteria instead of eating at home, right? We start to make assessments about who people are based on what we see them putting in their mouth. So I am, like Lynn mentioned, I am currently a communication studies instructor here at Seattle Central and a couple other community colleges in the Northwest. But I started out working in food magazines, nonprofits, and other industrial food spaces. So I've been a cook, I've been a food writer, I've worked with food advocacy groups. And the reason for that is that when I went to graduate school to get my master's degree in communication studies, what really interested me was how food is a form of communication, right? When you cook something for somebody, you're telling them something about how you feel about them. And if they reject that, like if you make something special for someone and they're like, oh no, I don't like that, I don't eat that, you feel devastated, right? You feel really hurt. So food is a form of communication, and that's what I studied while I was in school. And then I went on to pursue that for a while in various forms, but found that I really liked teaching. So that's why I'm back to teaching. But hopefully at the end of today, you have a better idea of how our food choices are complicated beyond just what we like to eat or just filling our belly with sustenance. And hopefully you have a new perspective on how you make food choices and how you perceive other people's food choices. So I'm going to talk about 2 major things today. The first is how meanings become associated with food and food objects, and then also what the implications of those meanings are for us as we eat and observe other people eating. So what we're going to do first is take a look at just one type of food that caused a huge controversy in a community in Virginia. So we will watch that clip and then we'll continue.
This. You see this?
Okay, she's talking about white bread.
Absolute putty. You call this bread? This is just starch and water and air. It isn't bread. Yuck.
White bread, I eat white bread. You can't get a big old stomach like this if you don't eat white bread.
I like crusty bread. I like it chewy and tasty.
Normal bread is like a slice of bread is wonder bread is the best.
7 grain, German, heavy brown bread.
There's nothing more basic than the food we choose to eat. And if what we eat is what we are, it's not surprising that no one wants to be told what to put on their plate. And when one group thinks it knows best, that's when the trouble starts.
The food shelf is a place where people are entitled to get 5 days worth of groceries. They come every day for bread. And what's really interesting is that white bread is basically a class issue. This is excellent organic Lilydale. It's sourdough bread. This is bread that would normally cost $3.50, $4 in the store. We can't even give this away at this point in time. We have boxes and boxes of this bread. Yet all of our white bread, the bread that costs 99 cents, is totally gone. Basically because for most folks, they want their sliced sandwich bread. How you doing? Like some Lilydale bread, it's No, you don't want that? No? Okay. All right.
In Burlington, bread is at the heart of an ongoing food fight that has exposed cultural differences and turned into a mini class war.
Hey, I'm Brady Baker. I want to be your city council representative. Do you ever shop at the co-op? Never? Why not?
No, because I don't like vegetarian stuff. We don't have meat supply. I get most of my stuff.
When the downtown grocery went out of business, low-income residents found themselves players in a citywide struggle to determine its successor.
Where are you doing your grocery shopping?
I go to the Shaw's.
You do go to the Shaw's.
Yeah.
Do you ever go over to the co-op?
No, some of the stuff is way too high as far as I'm concerned.
The question was, who would get to build the new grocery to serve them? Shaw's, an international chain of supermarkets? Or the Onion River Co-op, mostly organic, politically conscious, and some would say a throwback to another era?
This is my favorite store in the world because it's a co-op. It's small. I think small is beautiful. I hate big. I think big is cancer.
I love eating organic food, and I want my son to grow up eating healthy, organic choices, so.
The co-op was not set up as a health food store. It's not set up as an organic food outlet. It was set up as an alternative to the capitalist modes of production. It has a cooperative structure, so it's...
The image of the co-op is a very strong one. And the idea that there are middle class, kind of counterculture hippies who eat strange foods and probably have the idea that that food is better than the food that I eat, and that also they want to convert me to that kind of food. Really great. I think it taps a whole lot of things that go on in a class society of who's better than whom.
What comes up for me is like, I'm in junior high school again, and those middle class kids are laughing at my clothes, and they're looking at my sandwich, and they're saying, what's that? And it's that kind of feeling, I think, that the people in Neighbor think they're gonna get when they walk into this new fangled food co-op supermarket. That these people are gonna be looking down their nose at them, and they're eating white bread.
Please give us a real supermarket with regular food and low prices and the great variety that we can have at Shaw's.
Do we want Shaw's as our good neighbor? given what they have done in the past? I don't think so, and I leave it to your judgment.
At a public hearing of the city council, it was clear that coming to a polite consensus among Burlingtonians was not in the cards.
Everybody in Burlington does not have money, and we seem to not be getting that.
The co-op will be run by people who live in the city, who live in the area, who are concerned about us. And I think you can't ever have a situation any better than that.
We've been starting a store tour type thing where people that have never bought, out of bulk bins, and we show them, and you just need to have a bag, or you can bring your own container in, weigh it first, so we can subtract that from the weight of the product. Here's how the bins work, you need to write this number on your bag.
I think a lot of these people that call are very nice, well-intentioned people, but they believe we know what's best for you, and we will show you that we know what's best for you. So the bottom line is that we're not going to carry cigarettes because they're hazardous to your health. We're not going to have lottery tickets because we know ultimately what is best for you.
Dislikes in relation to the co-op. What is it that you don't like?
I don't like it being forced down our throats.
Yeah,
okay.
Everything I ever bought was lettuce or tomatoes or cucumber, and everything else was so expensive you couldn't buy it.
Too expensive. All right, another one?
People here eat meat, and people outside eat meat.
Okay.
Co-op is not no good for this city. And you know it, and I know it. But you're not gonna say yeah.
You're wrong in that you can go to the co-op right now and you can buy chicken legs and thighs for 99 cents a pound. But
You're lying through you know what?
Okay.
You're lying through your teeth.
Okay.
You are and the
When you look at the people surrounding the co-op, most of them went to Burlington High School. A lot of them graduated. A number of them didn't. But at the high school was really the last time they came in contact with upper middle class people. And who were those people? Well, those were the people who were the goody two-shoes. Those were the people in the HVAC, the honors classes, the teacher's pets. When there was an argument, the teacher always took their side. So there are years of resentment that have been bottled up for those people.
On the co-op, they voted on it without the people's voice.
Well,
and it wasn't right. You should have let the people speak their voice and not pull a shit like you did with the mayor and the council. I don't give a shit.
When you are invisible in a culture, and low-income people are invisible in this culture, you can't feel good about yourself. And you can't feel good about the people who are making you invisible. And so the co-op, in a sense, is one of those institutions. It's run by those upper middle class people who have a whole lot of education and who were trained to look down upon low-income people.
I'll go to Price Chopper. I'll take a bus and I'll go to Price Chopper and get the sales and the double coupons.
Class conflict is not talked about much in America, but like the proverbial sleeping giant, when it raises its head, we get a glimpse of how power and influence are parceled out in our society.
Okay. So, I think this is an important clip to start this conversation for a couple reasons. The first is it points to how one food item, bread, can be an incredible point of contention and frustration for people. It should be simple, right? Bread is flour and yeast and water and time, and you bake it. But it's not that simple. People have very strong ideas about what makes for good bread and bad bread, and they also have strong ideas about who eats a particular kind of bread. And the other thing this clip does for us is it points to how food systems are as much a part of the power systems in our society as anything else, right? People who feel comfortable eating white bread are considered to be people of a lower class. People who feel comfortable eating a rich, dark, brown, crusty, seedy bread are considered to be people of a higher class, right? And we get tied to those class associations and those comforts, and we start to make judgments based on that piece, right? right? The bread that they eat. And this is why we see at the food pantry that they can't even give away the organic bread, right? Because people want the white bread. That's who they are. They feel comfortable with that. And so when they don't take the organic bread, for some reason they get condemned, right? Like, oh, we can't even give away this organic bread. But that's not what they want, right? So I want to talk about how foods start to get these meanings. And so the way that I make sense of it is based off what's called the semiotic triangle. Have any of you studied this before? Okay, sometimes in our communication books it's called the semantic triangle. And what happens with the semiotic triangle is you have three things at work. You have an object, which is called the sign, okay? So in this case, I'm going to use the example of an apple, okay? So if I have an apple right here, this is the sign, right? You look at that and you think apple. And in other languages, you have other words for it. In Finnish, we call them omena. What do you call them in Chinese?
Pinghua.
Pinghua, right? So that word, pinghua, right, or apple or omena, is the signifier. Because it's the symbols we use to identify that object. Is that clear? Right? So you say pinghua, and you know, in your mind, you picture the apple, right? And so when I say apple to you, you picture in your mind the apple. But we also have other things that we picture. And these are called the referent, or the things that's referred to. So in American culture, apples stand for education, health, right? And if I say to you, hey, I got a new apple, what am I talking about? A computer, an iPhone, right? And so these signs and signifiers start to take on much broader meaning than just what they mean at their core, right? And these meanings come from our social experiences. If somebody lived in a part of the world where there were no Apple computers, and I said to them, I got a new apple, they might think that I was talking about the tree fruit, right? They wouldn't know that I was talking about a computer because they'd never been exposed to that idea. So this second meaning here, the reference, is the one where we carry all of our social experience and personal beliefs to an object or a word. So in terms of bread, depending on the experiences you have and the beliefs you hold, you will look at a particular kind of bread and make a different assessment than someone else. So in this case, we are looking at groups of people who have particular experiences with, let's say, Wonder Bread or white bread. And one group looks at that and says, this is good. This is good bread, right? This is the bread that I can eat quickly, that I can afford, right? Another group looks at that bread and says, that is bad. That is terrible bread. It's bad for you, right? It's cheap, right? So we have people with different experiences making different assessments based on the reference or the ideas that they hold about a particular object. And all food can be looked at this way, right? Every food object can be looked at this way. If I say to you McDonald's, right, every one of you has a different assessment. Some of them might match based on your experiences. Some of them might not. Same thing would be true if I gave you some of these buzzwords like organic and local, right? We hear these all the time right now. And then we see companies making offshoots of them. Natural, right? A whole food, right? And these buzzwords provide people with a space to make an assessment about the food based on their experiences. So this is important because we have very, very strong feelings about these meanings or associations. So people move into the business world or society with these feelings and make choices about what they eat, where they eat, based on those feelings. And similarly, other companies or power structures or businesses are trying to get you to see a particular meaning in a given food. Do you remember the McDonald's ads from last year where they said, Potatoes grown in eastern Washington, fries made in Lake City. Anybody see those? Right? Apples grown in Spokane, apple pie made in Shoreline. This is McDonald's who's advertising like this. But they were working at that time to get you to see McDonald's as a producer of local foods, right? They were saying, hey, look, these French fries, the potatoes are grown right across the mountains. And then they're made in your neighborhood. It's like, okay, they're made in our neighborhood, but those exact same fries are made in Japan, right? But they were working with that advertising to try to get you to see them as a local food. So, given that, we have to be careful of some of the way that these meanings are perpetuated and used over and over again. So, how many of you know what a farmer's market is? Many of you. Okay. Do you go?
I work.
A couple of you, right? A couple of you. So, farmers markets are the amount of growth in farmers markets across the nation is huge right now. If you talk to farmers from Washington, they will tell you right now that Seattle is too saturated. Like they can't make enough money at any of the markets because they're too big. So they're very, very popular, but the meanings that people hold for farmers markets are very divergent. And some people feel very welcome and comfortable there, and they get a sense of goodwill, like I'm doing something great, I'm shopping for my local farmer, right? Just 1 second. And then others feel super excluded, right? They don't feel comfortable there. They don't feel like they can afford some of the prices. They don't feel comfortable asking the questions or engaging in the conversations. Yes?
I just quickly wanted to say that I work at the most popular organic vegetable stand at the Ballard and the University District.
Who is
Farmers Market. It's called Nash's.
Yep.
And
I know Nash.
Yeah, great. Well, I was just going to point out that the differences between the Ballard market and the University District market are huge. The community that comes to the Ballard, and it's so different from the U.
Exactly, yeah. And so the space where the market is has a huge impact on how comfortable people feel going there. But also the vendors have a huge impact on who feels comfortable going there. And you'll see a lot of divergence in vendors because we have people like Nash. So Nash's farm has been around for a while. It's part of the PCC Farmland Trust, which means that his farmland will be farmland always, an organic farmland always. And he's very well established in the community and a huge player in terms of motivating organic agriculture. But there are also Hmong farmers from Washington that come to the farmers market. And they set more competitive prices, right? They set much lower prices. Their product is still organic, but they have a different system, right? They're usually families that are working on farms, so they aren't paying necessarily employees. So I'm not saying Nash is one of these people, but so the Hmong farmer comes, sets a much lower price than someone who is running an organic farm as a business and truly a business. And then this culture clash breaks out, right? Because the existing organic business farmer is incredibly frustrated that this family of farmers is able to undercut them. And what ends up happening is the Hmong farmers end up feeling less welcome in these markets and less able to sell because they are so ostracized based on business principles by other vendors. But it keeps the market less diverse in terms of who's selling there. So along these same lines, there is a researcher she's a social geographer. So what that means is she goes to different places and assesses how welcome people are there and what happens in those places. Her name is Julie Guthman, and she works at the University of California, Santa Cruz. And what she writes about is how welcome or how accessible alternative food spaces are to people. So she writes about farmers markets, she writes about organic farms, she writes about all of the things that our hegemonic culture or super culture has said to be good, right? You are healthy if you eat organic food. You are healthy and helpful if you go to a farmer's market. And what she has found is that the people that feel welcome there are the people who already are a part of the hegemonic superculture, right? So those people feel welcome. They feel healthy. They feel like they're doing something good. The people who don't feel welcome are the people who already have less power in society. And this is not a surprise, right? We could expect this. But what is hard is that those groups that want to make their space more accessible, like a farmer's market, they don't necessarily consider the power implications of their space. So what they say is, why wouldn't anyone want to eat better? Right? Just come. It's much better for you. Right? You'll find out that it tastes better too. And it's like, yes, those are things that you can say, but they don't make your space more welcoming for people. Right? It doesn't change the referent for people. They still feel excluded. So I don't necessarily have a solution to that issue. I'm not sure that anyone does. But thinking about how food spaces can invite or exclude people based on whether they eat white bread or crusty bread, or whether they feel welcome or not, is very important. And I hope that you will at least walk away today thinking about some of those things when you're making your own food choices or entering food spaces. And I have one final example to leave you with, which is that I worked for a while in a food bank, like the one we saw here. And one of the things that happened in that food bank is people, there was a campus kitchen project where they would make hot meals for people that were using the food bank and deliver them to the food bank. And they were pretty standard hot meals, you know, macaroni and cheese and tuna casserole, stuff like that, canned vegetables. And one of the people I worked with there also used the food bank. So he was not able to produce his own food or afford his own food, but he was volunteering at the food bank. And he said to me and a couple other people working there from the college, you know, we have extra of these hot meals, why don't you take one home with you? And one of the people I was working with turned to me and said, I'm never taking food out of here. And I said to them, what does it say if we don't? You know, we don't need to take the food out of here, no. But if we don't take it, then we have condemned that food as something that we don't eat, right? Because we are better than that, right? And we're not, really. And so it's important to really be thoughtful about how we are taking these perceptions and references that we have about food and applying them to other people, and also applying those expectations to other spaces, right? Like the farmer's market. So now I'd like to discuss whatever questions or thoughts have cropped up for you. Yes?
Here's a contrasting example, contrasting in one way. I used to know an old professor who had been born in Italy in 1913, came to the US when he was 10, and he told me that in Italy, the working class, the poor, and it was a very class unequal society, as you could imagine. What the working class ate was black, whole grain bread made from wheat, because it had absolutely everything in it.
Yeah.
And yet they looked down on it. They associated white bread with high living.
Yes, yeah. And this is one of the interesting things about bread, which is that as culture, you know, as modernism and, what's the word? Henry Ford. You know, as we have become more mechanical, right? Yes, industrialized. Then we have taken something that used to be peasant, right? Like dark, rich bread. And because that is harder to produce in a mechanicalized society, the reverse has occurred, right? The white bread has become the cheap, inexpensive, poor people bread. Yes?
A couple of comments just along those lines. I remember in the 50s when my mother got a full-size freezer, and that was when saran wrap came in, and I mean, people used to use wax paper. I mean, there were a lot of things that were considered modern post-war. And my mother filled up her freezer with all kinds of, you know, TV dinners, not like what frozen dinners you find now. I mean, those TV dinners were disgusting, but I love them. I mean, so it was a lot of processed food. I guess that's the best way to describe it. And that was considered high living.
Yes.
And I was in an upwardly mobile community. The other thing I wanted to say was, there were two things. Let's see. One of them was, when I was growing up, there were farmers' stands, like out in the country, which is probably now just sort of, you know, an extension of suburban areas, but we really went out to the country.
Yeah.
And there's still stands like that. I mean, when you drive to Puyallup and all. And I don't know what to make of it, but there's a difference between, you know, people really wanted the produce from us. It wasn't organic stuff, but it was the idea we were getting fresh produce. We'd go get our corn that way. And so there wasn't I didn't sense that there was a class thing attached to that.
Not at that time, no. And part of what's changed is, just like you're talking about with the freezer, is in terms of industrialization, we can process fresh vegetables into frozen vegetables so much faster and so much more cheaply, or canned vegetables, right? And so as the prices on those things have plummeted, and the prices on labor, like hand labor in farms, have gone up, we've seen a sort of class divide there in terms of the kind of vegetables that you're eating.
I wanted to say one other thing, the third thing came to my mind. Within my own family, or my husband's and my family, my husband grew up in rural Wisconsin. His father was a
Cheese curds.
Yeah. His father was a cheese maker, and all the relatives were dairy farmers. And his sister, now that family and my family that lives here, and my own family in New York, we all are, have college degrees. Basically class-wise, we are equal. My husband's family in Wisconsin still eats white bread, and my kids make fun of it.
Yeah.
And I must say I do too.
Yeah.
So it's not even a class thing, it's a regional thing.
Yes, it's all identities, right?
Yeah.
So it could be an identity that you hold in terms of location or race or something like that. Like if we talk about chitlins, like some people are really comfortable with chitlins and have eaten them before. Other people, I tell them what a chitlin is and they go, oh my god, that's horrible, right? But it has all of our identities come into play here in terms of how we look at the reference. Yes?
Yeah, I don't want to go too far into some of the backgrounds that brought me to my food decisions, but with the increase of my educational background and knowledge, I think that highly affected my food choices now too, like knowing what's in my foods, and being a person who is the son or mother who is on assistance, and getting specific foods, which foods are actually geared towards the poorer communities and considered waste, so you kind of give it to them.
And it's affordable.
Yeah, and it's affordable, and when you look at the other supermarkets in those communities, some of the food quality differences are enormous.
Yes.
And I still can't afford like high quality stuff, but knowing what's in the food now, you kind of still make that coin toss, like,
sure.
I got $10 today, I guess I'll get the high price bread.
Yeah, and it takes you longer to make your decision, right? Because you're thinking about all of those things as you're going. But you're pointing to something that's called a food desert, right? Where there are low-income communities and very few grocery outlets, and a lot of times the biggest grocery outlet is the gas station, right? Which is prepared foods. And this is part, there is a lot to be said about how food is working as a dividing system to keep poor people fat and unhealthy, right? And rich people thin and healthy. But that's a much bigger issue. Maybe we'll do that talk.